Leggett & Platt has a very long history of growth through acquisition. And in general, we would be curious to hear your thoughts on whether acquisitions are easier or harder to make today than they were when you all implemented this strategy, and any advice that you would have in general for how to approach this type of growth strategy.
Okay. Yeah, acquisitions have been a very, very important part of Leggett's overall growth. And in a word, I would say that today, because you asked contemporarily, they are harder to do than they were a few years ago, pre-2006, 2008. In that time frame, it became very much more difficult to do acquisitions, and that's partly due to the fact that many of the target companies have suffered too. They've generated less profitability, less cash flow, and so companies like Leggett that use a discounted cash flow enterprise valuation technique are only able to value businesses to a certain level. Well, that particular enterprise valuation may be below what the owners want or need for their business, and as such, they become less willing to part with their company. Now, it becomes a little easier if there are significant synergies involved, where a targeted company, we know that once we acquire that company, there's going to be a meaningful amount of, say, procurement synergies or manufacturing operational synergies. But the problem with that is if you monetize upfront all of those synergies, they may not happen. And if they don't happen to the extent that you've paid for them to happen, then you've destroyed shareholder value in the process. So today there's more of a stalemate, if you will, between the seller and the buyer. And one way to bridge that gap, and we do this periodically, is to use a contingent payout process where if the cash flow of the business, profitability and cash flow of the business exceeds what we had originally forecasted and indeed paid for, then we will pay the seller more in enterprise value. Now, that works best if it's a freestanding business that is not going to be integrated into one of Leggett & Platt's or the acquirer's organization, and especially good if the seller stays on as an employee manager so she can continue or he can continue to drive that company, because that way they are paid for basically what they do.
Mm-hmm. So, and remain invested on a personal level as well.
Exactly, mm-hmm. Exactly right. So it used to be a lot easier to do acquisitions, and I believe that it will become easier as companies climb back out of this quagmire of tough economy, if you will. But the most reliable economists are not predicting any hockey sticks in improvement, and so it's been a long slog, and it's getting better, but it may be a few years before we see the heydays of acquisitions back in the 2005, 2006 range.
Well, I'm sure when we get back there that you all will be on the front line.
We'll be active. In fact, we're active as we speak.